Give it a go. Welcome to the Wokelandia podcast, where we are exposing the injustice in social justice. We're your hosts, the Back Home Brothers. My name's Caleb, and the singer over there is
Joseph. Welcome to the
We're gonna
Wokelandia podcast.
yes, we're gonna have a fun one today. Might be a little shorter. I guess we'll find out, but
No, it won't.
You don't think so?
100%. No way.
Oh yeah, it might be.
No,
I'm
it
just
won't.
gonna end it. Just so I win.
Now, just on principle. We are
So
done.
right.
I have won the
This
debate.
sentence, I'm like,
it was in
and-
fact shorter. No.
Yeah, so we'll be shorter. We've got 3 light topics to talk about. All of them sort of serious, but all of them sort of not serious too.
But that's the thing about all of Wokelandia. Everything is sort of serious and everything is sort of not serious too.
Which is why you can make a game out of it and just totally laugh, but also learn something real.
The line between reality and satire is so fuzzy.
Yeah.
So fuzzy. So Caleb, Fields, let's start off with Fields.
Yes. So we'll start out with Fields, with the fighting Trojans of USC, who I always love to see lose in football.
We love to see them lose in football, and they are now very clearly losing in life, at least
They're
in the
also losing in
Department of Social Work. Let's read this. This is a memo dated January 9th. So just a few days ago, they sent out, and I'm going to read the first paragraph because you really need to just kind of absorb the whole thing as it was presented to us. I don't want to take their words out of context. I don't want to speak for them. I'm just going to let them speak for themselves. And then I want to respond to this.
Don't make them sound silly by taking their words out of context.
Yeah, this is from the School of Social Work at the University of Southern California. The memo, it's from the Practicum Education Department. So no person put their name on this. So this is apparently a brain trust at USC. And this is regarding a department name change. And it says, as we enter 2023, we would like to share a change that we are making at the Suzanne Dworak Peck School of Social Work to ensure our use of inclusive language and practice. Specifically, we have decided to remove the term field from our curriculum and practice and replace it with practicum. This change supports racist social work practice by replacing language that could be considered anti-Black or anti-immigrant in favor of inclusive language. Language can be powerful, and phrases such as going into the field or field of work may have connotations for descendants of slavery and immigrant workers that are not benign. I will stop there. There is more in the memo, but that is the thrust of the memo, that phrases like going into the field or field of work may have connotations for the descendants of slavery and immigrant workers that are not benign. Caleb, is this progress? Should we all be horrified if someone uses the term field these days?
No, it's not progress, unfortunately. And part of the deal, and part of the serious part of this, is it's teaching something here, which is teaching to look for any possible thing to be offended at, which is not a good way to live your life. It's a hard way to get through life if you're constantly looking for things to be offended at. But it's also something funny to joke about, because stuff like this does really.
Well, this is so attenuated, right? It's very difficult for me to believe that how many people automatically think of slavery when they hear the word field. I mean, what you've got a football field, you've got a baseball diamond, you've got a cornfield, you've got a wheat field, you've got a field of study, right?
Can you see this?
Okay, we're gonna do this. Okay, yes.
This is what I'm doing now. And I heard this years ago. But what is that? You don't know, but this was a picture of a man outstanding in his field.
Yes, a man, and for those of you who may not have been able to focus on the artwork that Michelangelo drew over there,
I
it's a
prefer
stick
Rembrandt,
figure
actually,
with
but,
a stick.
Whatever.
Yes. Okay.
It
is a man outstanding in his field. Yes. So that's your dad joke for the day. But that is kind of the point, right? That we're not supposed to say.
That's not allowed at USC.
That joke would be offensive. And if we are going to if we are going this far, that the word field, I mean, and of course, slaves did work in fields, but so did lots of people. And it's weird that you would say it's going to trigger like descendants of slaves and immigrants, because there are a lot of people who today work in fields.
And for most of human history, the most common occupation among humanity was, I don't know how to put this other than saying, working in fields.
Right. Agrarian societies. That's kind of what they've done, right?
They woke up and they went out to the field and they worked for
they worked in it
12 hours, and they came home and ate and went to sleep. And then the next day they did it again. This is the idea that this would somehow be oppressive, or I don't know. It's bizarre.
Let's think about this, right? Because we're always trying to understand Wokelandia and the world they live in. How do we get to the point where we're going to, even with a straight face, and again, these are not stupid people. These are probably smart people. I don't know them all, but they are teaching in some kind of university. So they're, at least their IQ is likely above average, right?
Mm-hmm. They can write paragraphs.
Yeah, I mean, they wrote the memo. They speak English, and this is, they know how to construct a sentence and write a paragraph. So there's some degree of like sentience and awareness there that we can grant to the authors of this memo. But the framework of wokeness, and again, it starts with this oppressor-oppressed dynamic. There are people who deserve empathy. There are people who do not deserve empathy. There are good people and bad people. The categories are different. It could be race. It could be your gender. It could be your sexual orientation. It could be your class status, all of those things. But there's good people and there's bad people. The purpose of all of life is to be happy. Happiness comes from psychological safety. And this idea that I never have to encounter something that is emotionally or psychologically troubling to me. And then who came up with this theory that the word field bothers me? I don't know. But when you embrace, when you embrace everything else leading up to that, when you embrace this idea that every human has the human right to be free of intellectual anxiety, of intellectual stress, of mental stress, of emotional stress.
But it causes that. I mean, that's the whole thing. This whole worldview causes that. I mean, nobody has ever heard the word field. Oh, there's a man outstanding in his field, or let's go play a game at the football field.
Yes.
And all of a sudden they're traumatized by it. That never happens unless it's taught specifically to try to find ways. I mean, we're all in the same boat, right? Should we not use that phrase anymore? I had somebody mention that last night, because slaves came over on boats at one point for a while. So maybe we shouldn't use the phrase we're all in the same boat anymore. Maybe we shouldn't even own boats anymore. And how far do you take this?
Well, tools, all tools. Slaves used tools.
Yeah.
So is the use of is work itself. Slaves were forced to do labor.
I got to go to work. Can't use that phrase anymore because slaves used to work. And so we shouldn't use that phrase. The idea that we should ban phrases rather than strengthen our minds is preposterous. There's no way you can get through life like that. And that's what they're doing.
And here's one of the reasons why this worldview and Wokelandia is such a miserable place to be. And I think for those who embrace this framework, for the authors of this memo who are going to say, hey, we all have to stop using the word field because it might not be benign to somebody who is very sensitive. You have created a world in which your happiness depends entirely upon the behavior of other people. And that guarantees that you're going to be miserable. If you allow yourself, if you give yourself permission to be offended, even by actually offensive words, right? People say things that we would probably all agree, that shouldn't be said.
And intentionally offensive sometimes too.
Yes. And if I allow my happiness to be affected by someone else's decision to do something terrible, I'm always going to be unhappy, much less looking for reasons to be offended, right? Because there are things that are objectively offensive where people intend to be offensive. If I'm going to take offense at things that people do not intend to be offensive, they're just using common vernacular, like we're in the same boat and he's outstanding in his field, right? Where you can just say that as a very polite, in polite conversation. If you're going to take offense to that, you are sentencing yourself to a life of misery. Because the only way then you can be happy, that you can have peace, that you can get along with your neighbors is to run the world. They become, ironically, your slave. And if you have subjugated everyone in the whole world, which of course is an impossible task, to live
Not for
exactly.
lack of trying, though.
Well, and that's the thing. And when you spend your whole life trying to control all of your friends and neighbors and the language that they use, even benign language that they use, well-intended language that they use, if you're choosing to take offense at that and refusing to have peace, because injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere, right? Which there's some truth to that. But when you extend that logic to this kind of a scenario, and you're going to fight people over the word field, you are sentencing yourself to a life of misery, which is why, in my opinion, so much of progressivism is so miserable, and it creates just unhappy people.
And so, speaking of trying to control everybody, let's talk about gas for a second. That's my great segue into the next line, but it actually works perfectly. But before we talk about the gas, which I mentioned last night, this other comment with Joe Biden this morning was kind of a gas. I'll say it that way. Yes. My goodness, but he's talking about these documents. This document story is just blowing up, and it's such a funny story. With, of course, the FBI raided Donald Trump because he had documents that were declassified according to Trump, and probably could have been declassified or probably were declassified, and he's got them at his house, and this is like the end of the world.
Yeah.
And now it turns out Joe Biden did the same thing, only he's had documents for 6 years and he wasn't the president, so maybe he didn't have any right to have the documents. How did he have these classified documents? I don't know. And where did he have them? Well, apparently he had them in his library. But then maybe he didn't have them as his home library, I should say, his study at home is what he said. But he also said that he had it in his garage with his Corvette this morning. And that's just so funny that he's got them. I don't know if he got them stuffed in the glove box.
Yes. No, I don't think I think they were just near his garage,
near the Corvette.
Near the Corvette.
He stressed that 2 times in the press conference this morning. And he said, like the exact quote, by the way, my Corvette's in a locked garage. It's not like there's sitting on the street.
What I think is so relatable about this is he says it in a way that implies every American will understand that one's Corvette is always in a very secure place. And so if there are secure documents near your Corvette, of course they are secure, because every American understands that you only keep your Corvette in a very safe place.
So it's not like they're sitting in the street, but you know what that means? That means they probably were blowing down the street at some point in the past when Joe Biden came home. And so maybe I'm thinking that he's probably shuffling along, picking up the documents. He's like, oh crap, look, they're out here. Then he gets them, puts them in the garage and shuts the garage door. He's like, finally.
Well, I do think most Americans consider the garage to be the place where they store things that have ceased to be valuable, right? It's purgatory before the dump.
Someday
you remove it from the bedroom, you remove it from the kitchen, you remove it from wherever it is. Let's just go put it in the garage until we figure out how to get rid of it, right? Those are not things that are important to you.
But the crazy thing is that he was asked in an interview a few months ago about Trump, what's up with Trump and these documents? And he said, quote, I don't know how anyone can be that irresponsible with taking these documents. It's like, well, apparently you do know, or it wasn't really irresponsible. And so what documents did he have? We don't know. Did he have, maybe he had stuff to help Hunter get information to the Ukraine and Chinese so he can keep the money flowing? We don't know. But we do know that was going on, and they're going to be investigating that now.
Well, here's what I think about the documents situation. I think, based on the fact that Trump had all these documents at Mar-a-Lago, now we know Biden has documents at Mar-a-Lago that are in his Corvette, in his garage,
in the hubcap, probably in the hubcaps. That's a very safe place to.
I think, it's true that because of the amount of regulation that we have, you're basically always breaking the law at some point. It's just a matter of somebody wants to enforce the law against you, right? Where we grew up in Western Washington, I once at one point discovered that it is illegal to have moss on your roof. It is a violation of the city code to have moss on your roof. We grew up in a rainforest, right? Everybody has moss on the roof, but that is in fact illegal. And so the only thing to prevent you from legal action is somebody deciding we want to enforce it, right? There's so many laws. That's my long way of saying, my guess is, based on what we now know about the President Biden and what we know about President Trump, is that probably every president removed documents that were considered classified from the White House as they moved out, and they kind of, whatever. And I think it just wasn't something anybody cared about until they realized they could use this against Trump. They could make this look like a bad thing because like everyone, because Trump has broken so many people's brains in so many ways. Right. And so it's like, oh, let's go get Trump. This is awful. And now that it's Biden, we have to like backtrack and try to make distinctions and pretend that there's a good way to take documents, or that this is not quite the same. And I think the reality is this is something that has happened routinely over the decades. Probably it hasn't ever been an issue of national security. Yeah. And this is just egg on the face of those who were pretending it's treason and it's the worst thing that anybody has ever done to have classified documents in their private residence after they become president.
You're calling for impeachment. Impeach him because right. he's selling nuclear codes to Russia. It's like, well, that would be a big problem if he was selling nuclear codes to Russia.
I think
that probably didn't happen. I mean, the idea that Biden was selling nuclear codes to Russia, probably not either. But it's just the fun double standard of this is incredible. Now, maybe Biden is up to no good financially. I actually think that is the case. Probably not related to these particular documents at all. Maybe it is. I don't know. But how does a vice president have it? Do senators have these things at their houses too? I mean, who all has them? Apparently, the president does. Apparently, Biden did as vice president. It's just a crazy thing.
I think the real story here is the coverage of the story, not the documents themselves, because it's the duplicitous way about that we have discussed classified documents. Now, I'm sure there's some documents that we don't want just floating around in people's garages that the president has access to. Whether these are on that list, I have no way of knowing. I've never had classified information, so I don't know. I just think it's hilarious to watch people immediately reverse course, and the same people who were, defensive of Trump are now going to let's impeach Biden. And the same people who are like, let's impeach Trump. It's, oh, well, this is totally different and not that big of a deal.
If it not for double standards,
there would be none. And actually, I think the politics of this are interesting because I think it has really significant political implications, because I think that they were certain. And I think that the Democrats really want to run against President Trump in 2024. And I think one way that they were going to elevate President Trump was to bring criminal charges around this, because they need him to be front and center. And I think if they bring charges against Trump, it will elevate him on the right. People will kind of rally to his defense. They will see it as an abuse of justice, as like using the Department of Justice as a political weapon, and it will give Trump a bump, which the Democrats need. I don't believe Joe Biden or whoever the Democrats run, I don't think they can beat anybody but Trump in 2020. Well, maybe if they run like Mitt Romney or something and totally suppress the vote on the right, it's possible. But I think in general, almost any Republican would beat Biden in 2024. That being said, so I think they really want Trump, and this was a way to elevate him.
That's probably true.
But I now don't know how they bring charges related to the documents against Trump. I don't even know how
they would have done it in the first place, frankly, because there doesn't seem to be any kind of legal.
It would have been obstruction charges probably related to this. But I don't know how they bring charges against Trump now that this has happened to Biden. I think it creates a huge political headache.
And he's had him for years, and he got him as vice president.
Before Trump was in office, of course. He's had him the whole time. Trump's had him for like
worse. If this is bad at all,
arguably,
which I'm not sure that it is, if it is, it's worse for Biden than it is for Trump.
Correct. So I think this creates a pickle for those who I think previously have been planning to bring charges against Trump. So maybe now they are going to have to manufacture some charges around January 6th, which is much harder to do than the obstruction charges. I don't know that they would have got a conviction anyway, but it didn't matter. Just the politics of this, you just needed to bring the charges. And the charges related to January 6th against Trump are going to be much more difficult to make a straight-faced argument for than obstruction charges with those documents, in my opinion. So we'll see. But I think I think it complicates their political calculation in making Trump a thing and making sure that he moves ahead in 2024.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't going to bring up that part of it, but we do want to talk about gas. The issue is now we are not going to have a short episode thanks to
Well, you. I told you we were not.
Yeah, well, that's just because you went off on some things that we weren't planning on talking about. So now you've totally screwed up.
I've rigged the game to make sure that I win.
Yeah, way to go. Yeah, that it sounds like this next thing of rigging the game, making sure
Yes.
nobody can get the gas stove that they want.
Yes.
California's already started doing this as of 2030. You're not supposed to get gas stoves. They're actually doing it a little sooner than that in some other ways with the permitting of building new houses and things of that nature. But this week, the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission, who I will admit I don't think I've ever heard of, but they are proposing a ban on gas stoves federally. They're calling them a hidden hazard is the phrase that they're using. And so that, of course, has hit the news here. And trying to get rid of gas stoves for everyone is, well, I don't think it's going to be received very well. But it's anything we don't like, we are going to ban so that people can't have them. And of course, all these pictures have been coming out of Kamala Harris with the cooking on a gas stove and Jill Biden cooking on a gas stove. Apparently, the prominent leftists like gas stoves a lot for themselves, but they want to ban them for others. I don't know.
Well, my
exactly
wife loves gas stoves. Apparently, it's a much more even heat.
Yes, it is. It works. Cooking. All commercial kitchens that I know of use gas stoves. Gas or propane, essentially the same thing in that, as far as this function works. And my wife, when we bought this house that we're in now, it didn't have a gas stove. So we ran a line and put in a propane tank and ran a line through the attic down into the kitchen. It was very expensive. I mean, relatively to the fact that we could cook before and we can still cook now. That's what it feels like to me. It's like,
but it's very different kind of cooking, clearly.
But she likes it way better. So
okay. So why are we supposed to hate gas stoves?
Well, it's dangerous. They don't exactly describe why. There's two reasons it's dangerous. One is because it just is dangerous when you're inside the house, and the gas can be dangerous to people.
If you leave it on and don't light it.
Well, not even so much that, although yeah, that actually really is a danger, but there's danger they're starting to discover. I don't know, maybe a lot of these things are just based out of nothing, but the other one is global warming, that they don't like gas because as I understand it, actually really doesn't contribute much to global warming, if at all, but nonetheless, it's not solar.
Is it better or worse than cow farts? Do we know this?
Well, it's probably a lot better.
Is it?
Because if you try to cook on cow farts,
what is the bigger threat? Gas stoves or cows?
Why do we have to choose? You can ban them both. You need to look at this better.
Ban cows?
Ban fields? Ban the cows in the field.
Interesting. When are we going to discover that there are certain species of animals that are a threat to the planet, and therefore we are going to lobby for the extinction of said animals?
Well, I think we're on that path. You get rid of the fields, and you get rid of the cows in the field, and then you get rid of the gas.
Well, cows are in fields, so that you could kill two birds with one stone.
It could be so inclusive.
But if you get rid of the cow, do you get rid of the field? Because the field would still exist. How do you just get rid of? You build cities in all of the fields, and then there's no more fields.
And there's no more. Mm-hmm.
We used to like fields because they were like open and nature. Nature creates fields. But since fields are racist, are we now like pro urbanization and pro like paving of fields? Yes. The parking lots used to be bad, but parking lots get rid of fields. What do you think?
There's so many ways you can go.
Can we sell that? Can we sell that? I bet you're going to see the developers using these arguments in the city councils when the greenies come and protest. They're going to protest the housing developments.
No more reminders.
That's right. You can say, but think of this. We're getting rid of fields, which make people think of slavery. And then they're going to be all confused. Well, that's true.
But it all it all ties in because it's the idea of telling people what they can and can't do with their lives. Now if you search this right now, you'll see those on the left saying, don't worry, this isn't happening. This isn't really going to happen. And it isn't going to happen if people push back on it. And they think they're going to get too much pushback, so it won't happen. But the idea is this is what the left wants to happen. And if they can get away with it, they will. That's the only thing that stops them. It's the worst argument you'll get from the left a lot is that doesn't happen. It's kind of like the partial birth abortion thing. It's like their best argument against it is that doesn't ever happen. And banning gas, that doesn't ever happen. Why not? You ask them why wouldn't they want it to happen? They can't give you an answer. that means they want it to happen. But the only reason it's not happening is because they haven't figured out how to make it happen. And that's what this whole gas thing is going to be too. They do want to get rid of gas because they think it's bad. And they think you don't know what you're doing if you're using gas, and you're a child and they're here to tell you what to do. But don't worry, it's not going to happen. But that's only because they can't figure out how.
One of the challenges with Wokelandia and that we see in the gas stove debate, that we see in, California's tried to they have banned the sale of gasoline vehicles in California after 2035, right? So they're banning things. It's kind of this micromanagement. It's kind of this arrogance that we have all the information that we need, that we know everything there is to be known. There's just, do you accept the truth or do you not accept the truth? And so we're going to make everybody accept the truth, whether you like it or not. And it's this sense that there is no other information that we don't currently have that's relevant to this debate. There's nothing else to be learned. So there's no way that we're wrong. And so, you go back over the history of kind of the climate change debate and the environmental debate where, 40 years ago, it was the threat from the ice ages, right? Then, yeah, we were going to all die because we were all going to be run over by glaciers. Then it was, oh, wow, it's changed. Now it's heating. Now it's just change, right? We're not even worried about global warming. We're just
the ozone hole in between that. Remember the aerosols and the big hair and the ozone hole?
And of course, there's so much stuff that's happening that we don't know about. And one of the things that kind of the spirit of Wokelandia and the efforts to micromanage people, we saw it in spades in COVID. Like within 3 weeks, we know exactly what the problem is. We know exactly what the solution is. It turned out that much of that diagnosis was incorrect, but they acted with absolute certainty. And we're going to control everyone's life because we are certain that our theory is correct and there's no other possible explanation. So we are going to ruin your life if need be to make you comply because there's no way that we are wrong. And that to me is one of the great dangers in this is it closes people's minds to the possibility that they are wrong. Maybe gas stoves are helpful. Maybe there's some harm. I don't know. But what I do know is that most of the things that I've been told to be afraid of in my life have not materialized in the way that people have told me that they were going to materialize. It turned out the sun continued to rise. And the idea that people are going to lose their civil liberties, lose their agency, lose their ability to make determinations for themselves. Oh, I want a gas stove. I want to live in a field. I want to call it a field. I want to say that men can't become women, whatever those things are. I want to own an electric light bulb, an incandescent light bulb. I just want to own it just because it exists, because I like the color of the light, whatever it is, right? The list is so long.
The gas cans, the gas cans you can't use anymore. It has to have the stopper thing on it, and you can't hardly get the gas out of it. The air conditioning units we use, the plastic bags, the plastic straws, all these things. They're saying, no, you can't have that. You can't use that.
I want to get a plastic bag at the grocery store, right? All these things. I want to sell my customers a plastic bag at the grocery store. All of these things that you're told you're not supposed to be able to do because, X, Y, and Z and all these potential harms. It's rooted in this arrogance and this idea that there's nothing else to learn, that we have the moral high ground in this case because there's no chance that we're wrong, despite the overwhelming historical evidence that they're always wrong in some way. It doesn't mean that there's never anything to be learning and we're adding to our knowledge, but this general idea that it is ever going to be possible for humanity to understand everything that needs to be understood logically and rationally and scientifically, that we're going to have the final answers to the questions and that everyone should be expected to submit to that. Nobody can ask any more critical questions. That's at the heart, I think, of this whole gas stove. If you like gas stoves, if you don't like them, don't have one. If you want to persuade people that they're harmful, persuade them that they're harmful. And there are many things that we've adjusted to, right? We don't participate in bloodletting anymore to cure diseases. There's lots of things that we have.
Didn't work. That's
right. Exactly. Right. I mean,
there was a reason for that.
The market adjusts when things are actually harmful. People come around to the fact that things are actually harmful. And though it might be slower than people would like, if you can be a dictator and force everybody to do things, it's better for our community if we do things in a way where, okay, we've all been persuaded that this is the right way to go, rather than like 3 experts decide this is the way to go and then use guns to make everybody comply. Even if you're right on the science and the opinion, you've done way more harm than good in trying to reach that outcome, because there was no because people were not given the choice to participate or not. And you just cannot control hundreds of millions, much less billions of people by brute force. Human nature doesn't allow it. And so it's a futile effort to even try, because there's just limits to what we're capable of, and what humans will tolerate.
Conservatives understand and respect that idea of individual choice within the limits of protecting rights. That's the limit you have to use. But the idea of controlling words, controlling your appliances for the entire nation or the entire world, it just doesn't work. And our idea of controlling the clock to keep it a shorter episode, well, that didn't work either. Thanks to you. I will say you filibustered intentionally to try to get us above what I said was going to happen. Obviously. And I didn't shut you off, and I should have, but I didn't. Oh, well. But we'll shut it off now. Any other closing comments? Otherwise, I'm going to hit the stop button and we're going to be done.
I don't know what it's going to be next time, but Wokelandia will provide us more material for the next one. We'll see you next time.
It'll be fun again. Thanks for joining us, everybody.